Is the Joel Embiid era over in Philadelphia?
The wild thing is, so they started 3-14. Even if you wipe that 3-14 off of their record, they're still under 500 this year. Mike mentioned on the podcast the other day, which is like, okay, take away the whole bad start, and they've lost 8 in a row, 7 in a row, and that a lot of them have been with those 3 guys. So yeah, this season is certainly over, and then even like more catastrophic, it seems like it's entirely possible this like era or whatever is over. So there's not a lot of clarity, like you said with Embiid. There's never been a lot of clarity. I know people like to, and I understand why they would blame the team for that, but it's been the same way under every leadership for the Sixers while Embiid's been there. That comes from Embiid. Embiid doesn't like public discussion of his injuries, doesn't like clarity on that, and I think they sort of have to follow that. So a lot of things coming to an end all at once, it seems like.
Well, he doesn't like talking about it, but he's brought it up a couple times. Like, he had the quote on, I think it was Thursday after the Boston game, and he's like, the way I'm playing a year ago, it's not the way I'm playing now, and no excuses, but I probably need to fix the problem to get back to the level. But in your story on Rice to Ricky Sanchez, you follow up saying that, and you're like, there is no fix.
Right.
There is none.
There isn't one. I think he, like I mentioned, it's complicated. I am sympathetic toward him because I'm because he's human, B, because I'm a fan of his, C, because he was so great in his prime here. So I want to be sympathetic toward what he's going through, but I'm also frustrated because when he says things like he did, he presents a different version of what is true, and what is real. The reality is, most likely, when he tore his meniscus again, when Kuminga fell on his knee, that we were in for this no matter what. So he had that surgery, and he keeps talking about a surgery. There isn't a surgery that's going to fix this. There are certainly therapies that they can try, and there are sort of more out of left field surgeries. People keep mentioning the Lonzo meniscal replacement. It is my understanding that it's not an option for Embiid. I think possibly because of his size. And let's be honest, we're not even sure how that's going to hold up for Lonzo at this point, after a year and a half off. He's playing, but we don't know. And he's in far better shape and not nearly as big as Embiid. So I think there are things they can try, but the best option was always to, given what his knee looked like and the situation he was in and sort of like the arthritic condition he had because of the meniscal, the 2 surgeries he had that removed part of the meniscus, was that his body just sort of adjusts and he doesn't have as much swelling, and they manage it when they have it. But his body has not adjusted. And every time he's tried to play within 2 or 3 games, they've had swelling again. So I don't know that there is, maybe one of these things works. I don't know, the more sort of out of left field, close your eyes, swing, and hope you hit a home run sort of things. But there isn't like a surgery he could have had before the year that would fix it. And there isn't a surgery now that will fix it. And I think when he says things like that, it almost screams to me like he is trying to convince himself that that he can just wake up one day and it'll be fixed, rather than the reality of what could actually happen.
And that's especially the scary part here. Because if you're talking about Lonzo surgeries, Lonzo missed 2 years.
Right.
And he's not the same guy that he was prior to the absence that he had. Defensively, he doesn't move the same way, doesn't make the impact when the Bulls had him and Caruso together and they're wreaking havoc as a duo. Offensively, he's not performing anywhere nearly as well. Can't get to the basket as much like they ever did that. Lonzo's just not the same guy. And so if that's the type of surgery you're talking about for Joel Embiid, a guy who already, just not the same impact player this year. He's had his moments where he looks like MVP level Joel Embiid, the guy that gives you hope of making a deep playoff run. But for the most part, do you agree with that assessment that even in the games where he has played, it's just nowhere near or as frequent as it was, prior to all of this madness?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's hard to tell, and it's impossible for us to know how much of that is his lack of trust in the knee, how much is pain, how much is just sort of a lack of mobility, and how much is like his disappointment that he is not able to be who he was, right? Like, so I sort of been thinking about this, and maybe there is a world in which he is skilled enough, right? He's one of the most skilled basketball players I've ever seen in my entire life. So he's skilled enough that even if he were 70% physically of what he were before, he can still be a plus player in the NBA. Can't be one of the 5 best players, can't do any of that, but is there a world in which he could be an effective NBA player if he's not trying to do all of those things that he used to do, right? I think that's possible, I guess, but that would also take a mental buy-in from him as, you know, hey, offense is not going through me anymore. Hey, I can't get fouled every time I want to. You know, hey, I can't make up this ground on this defensive rotation because I simply don't have it in me anymore. But these are decisions that I think players usually make in their mid-30s, where age has caught up to them, you know, and he's not there. And he's never been the hardest worker in the world, you know, and he's never been a guy totally willing to bend for, he always wants the offense going through him. So I don't know what the future is, right? I don't think he's going to play again this year for sure, but trying to guess how they maneuver around this is really tough, because if there isn't a market for him and they decide they don't want to build around him anymore, do you pay 2 draft picks to get off of him? Is that the smartest thing to do when you're trying to rebuild a roster, you know, around young players, giving up draft picks just to get off his contract? I have no idea.
I mean, dude, I can't fathom doing that. I just wouldn't want to do that. I'd want to at least give it another year with Joel before I resort to attaching draft picks to him. I mean, I still think, like you talk about, I think that you're spot on there. With Philly this year, they add Paul George. Jared McCain's looking like the rookie of the year. Some of their role players are playing really well. Like Maxi's still playing at a high level as well. So it's like you still have like a supporting cast that makes sense around MVP level Joel Embiid. So the 70% version of him that you're talking about, this theoretical version of Embiid, I still think another team could see, you know, value in taking a swing at that. The problem is the length of his contract remaining. And the value of that contract. If you're paying for 70% Embiid, that's not the type of money he should be making, if that's all you're going to get out of him, and he's still going to have durability concerns moving forward. So for Philly, this season's over for sure.